Now it's time for Straight on the Point with Jesse T from some undisclosed location somewhere in the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Jesse T.
Well. Good to be back on the air and everywhere with you. The Brown Beauty is back on duty. Jesse T, it's a Jesse T show. Jesse Terrero with you as we roll through the week here, Monday through Friday from 5 to 6. We're on the air and everywhere, from the community to the world, and we are all over every place today. Man, it's a weird day. One part of L.A. is cloudy and overcast and cool. The other part of Los Angeles is hot and muggy. Another part of L.A. is windy. It's just happening. We're getting all the climate changes here in Southern California right now, that's for sure. Good to have you with us here as you start checking in on Instagram Live. Instagram Live. What's up, Instagram Live? Yes, Instagram Live. Hey, you've been falling off Instagram Live. You got to get going. Let's start chiming in. Facebook.com/Jesse Terrero and Facebook.com/The Power of Voices. Yeah, we're there too. And straight on the point now, we can't forget about our YouTube friends at YouTube Live. Jesse Terrero and the Power of Voices. We do archive up on Periscope over there. We got the Periscope crew going. Very much Periscope. Hey, Periscope is kicking Instagram's butt. I like that very much. Facebook, you're still the leader, but they're catching up with you. Hey, we can't forget about our other friends at Google+, Tumblr, Twitter, Diggy, Reddit, Pinterest, and all those other things. Did I say Pinterest? Oh, I meant Pinterest. That's right. Well, Pinterest, thank you very much. Lee Baby Michaels, our announcer that brings us on every day. I gave him a hard time on his show this morning from 10 to 12. I took up the last 15 minutes and kept the diatribe going. Yes, and then he cut me off. Well, that's all right. He does that real well. Yes. Okay. So it's good to have you here. We got a great show lined up for you today as we get going. I've got somebody right to the next of me. He's camera left or camera right or screen left or screen right. It depends where you're looking from. Just as long as you're not looking from up or down. We don't have any cameras up there. We don't have cameras. Oh, no, we ain't got no cameras there. But we got a beautiful lady who's just written a beautiful book. She's an actress. She's done a lot of stuff. We're going to get in talking about her. Roberta Besson.
Ooh, I like how you say that.
In this corner, it's dressed in yellow and black with a winning record of 14-6 and 6 KOs. It's Roberta Besson.
Oh. I feel like now we have our own late night talk show.
We do.
We're ready to go.
We are ready for Freddie. That's right. But I've never been able to find Freddie.
That statement was a big part of my life all the time.
Was it really? How did I know that? I must be telepathic. I don't know how that could possibly be.
Hear that.
Yeah, it's ready for Freddie, but never ready to get steady.
Ooh. No, I have my wonderful Aunt Lillian used to say that all the time. I haven't heard that since I was a little girl.
Have you heard this one, Fair to Midland?
Yes.
That's from the Midwest. Fair to Midland. Remember that one, Lee? Everybody said that.
They were from Chicago.
Oh, I'm from Chicago.
Oh, you're from Chicago?
Chicago. Chicago.
Well, I was born here, so maybe I didn't get all of it.
As we were talking, you have that California monotone.
Well, I do have the accent of a Midwest. There is in there.
Yeah, just a little bit. We do like your accent, though. And we do say that you're dressed very beautiful today.
Thank
you look
you.
terrific in your yellow summery dress and your black. Well, it's actually brown, but it comes on the camera as black. I don't know how that's.
I didn't want to correct you, but I let you go.
Look, correct me anytime. You know, I've been corrected by everybody in this world. It seems like everybody wants to correct me.
Well, I like you in your vest and your very sexy shirt. And,
my goodness.
Really cute.
You want to go out on a date?
Oh, well, I don't know if my husband would be too thrilled about that.
Well, bring him along.
Oh, okay, that's good.
He can pay. What are you talking about? I'll make you a deal. You can't refuse. Okay. What's wrong with you?
Ooh.
Okay, so we got Roberta. Roberta.
Oh, I love when. Yeah, I do too.
Roberta.
I like the European sound.
Yes. Yes. Roberta.
Very good.
We've got her here because she has a terrific book that she just published and has just written, and it's terrific. Now, if you recall, just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they released a photograph, a black and white photograph, which was really kind of sketchy, but they made it out just enough that was Amelia Earhart and her co-pilot sitting on some dock. I thought it was going to be like sitting on the dock of the bay, Right?
And I have it right here for your viewers.
Okay, and there's the picture. So let me grab that
I also
picture.
have it from the actual book.
So there's the picture right there, guys. You can kind of see her. See, she's back over in here, and you remember that picture? It was all over the news. It was on every newspaper and everything.
Right.
Amelia Earhart, and this picture was something that no one has ever seen before.
Right.
And that's the beauty for our Instagram audience right there. You can check it out too as well. And we're going to talk about this picture real quickly here because this was the first time that anybody captured her photograph after the so-called accident. Now, let me set this up because Roberta has written a book, and here's the book. It's Amelia Earhart, Me and Our Friends, Journaling the Journey. Now, check this book out. Is this beautiful or what? It's just this is Amelia right here. These are Amelia, and it's a plane that she flew at one time. And this talks all about Roberta's research into Amelia Earhart. Now, I have a particular interest in this, and I'll tell you why. My mother was a pilot.
Really?
Yeah, she was a private pilot. And my father flew off the Lexington in the Korean War.
The Lexington,
USS Lexington.
The USS Lexington was one of the ships that was on the search for her when she disappeared.
Look at
my gosh!
Come on now, Jesse T. It's me, Jesse T. What can I tell you? Now, here's the interesting thing. When my mom got her license in the early 1960s, it was so odd that a woman would have her private pilot's license. In fact, her instructor, who was an old-timer, gravelly old-timer, he had never instructed a woman to become a private pilot before. That was his first time.
Really?
And he'd been a flyer since the Wright brothers. I mean, this guy was old at the time. And it was a big thing that my mom could fly planes. And then she eventually got her twin-engine ticket as well. So we always talked about Amelia Earhart when I was a little boy.
Oh, my goodness.
And she was a fan of Amelia Earhart. Wow. And so in a family library, she had 2 or 3 books about Amelia Earhart. And that was always an intriguing story for my mother. So she related to that.
Oh, my goodness.
So when it was suggested that I interview you about your terrific book here.
Oh, my gosh.
Amelia Earhart, Me and Our Friends, Journaling the Journey, and written by Roberta Ellen Basson.
Yes.
And it's a bestseller. Look at that. I like that. I like the bestseller. Yes, very much. And it's a terrific book. And there's some great pictures and information in here. I had to have you in because there's a lot of great things to talk about. So how did you get involved in writing this terrific book? I mean, you're an actress and you've done a lot of things in the media.
Right.
But writing this book about this particular person, how did you come about doing that?
Well, as we know, Amelia Earhart was ahead of her time. That's always fascinating. She was a visionary, and she was extremely courageous. I've always been interested in women's issues. I was drawn to her. I can't tell you exactly really why. I was in a group repertory theater. This was over 25 years ago. And we picked a subject to write a play about. For some reason, I picked Amelia Earhart. And who would believe that I would still be researching Amelia Earhart? It has taken me on this enormous journey that I am just shocked about. And it has allowed me to meet people famous, not so famous, that are connected with aviation, record setters. I met Bobby Trout, who was her actual competitor when I did the first time I did the play, which I did at the Santa Monica Museum of Flying. And that was the day, really.
That's a great museum, by the way. I've been there. Yeah.
Well, that was the first one. Now they have a new one that they moved to. But the first one, when I did the play, I did it for Women's History Month. And I did it every weekend for a month. And in that amount of time, I met Bobby Trout. I met Gabrielle Brezhnik, who was the wife of Albert Brezhnik, who was Amelia's photographer.
Wow.
We became very close friends.
What stories did they tell you?
She was just very close friends, and she's since passed, and it just hurts me so much because we really got to know each other well. We went to the 99s. The 99s had me perform my play, Amelia Earhart in Her Own Words, for their group. I met the first a Chinese woman flyer who got her license at that time. So. And I met the youngest Tuskegee Airmen, all in that month, the first month that I had performed my show.
And we're losing all the Tuskegee guys now.
Right, he was only 15. He was very young when he was the youngest of them all. So it started me on this journey, and who would dream that 20? That was 17 years ago, that I would still be doing the play, and that this book would evolve from that, is what happened. The book evolved from the play.
Now, let me tell some folks a little bit about who Amelia Earhart was, just some hot button things, and you can elaborate on some of this stuff. She was the first woman to solo, fly a plane by herself. Now, we're talking the 1930s. It's not like the planes are today where you just get in and you have all these mechanics and make sure everything's perfect, and they have all the radar, and they have This was tantamount to literally walking across the desert with a canteen, okay? And hoping you can get across the Death Valley with one canteen. I mean, to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, the Titanic, the Devil's Triangle, all these crazy stories of ships being lost. And she was the first woman to solo across the Atlantic Ocean way back in 1937.
Well, she disappeared in 1937.
Okay, so prior.
Her fame, to clarify, her initial fame was being the first woman as a passenger. As a passenger, I really emphasize that because we forget that even for a woman to be in a plane was a remarkable feat.
Right, okay.
That wasn't normal. So she was the first female passenger in 1928 to go across the Atlantic. But as she said, she didn't feel her fame was worthy. She didn't feel worthwhile until she finally flied solo in 1932. In 1932.
Even earlier.
1928, she was a passenger. 1932 is when she flew by herself solo across the Atlantic.
That's amazing.
So that was, that was when her fame just was, just increased constantly.
And we're not talking about flying jets. We're talking about flying
a single engine
propelled plane.
Right.
I mean, that must have. How long did that take? Do you know? It took a long time.
No. Let's see. It was when she was a passenger. It was 20 hours 40 minutes. It actually was 20 hours, I believe, 43 minutes but her husband, George Palmer Putnam, was her publisher and promoter, and he felt that it would sell better. It was a better title to say 20 hours, 40 minutes.
Right.
Which is what the Friendship flight, which was the initial flight that she, as a passenger, took. Her solo Atlantic flight took, I believe, 15 hours and probably a few extra minutes.
Right.
And that was by herself. The passenger, when she was a passenger, you had a crew. You had Wilmer Stoltz, who was the pilot, and then you had Lou. The other gentleman, Lewis Gordon, who was the navigator, I believe, and so the three of them were on that trip, and that was the initial part of it.
And this was all before America got into World War II, but Europe was already starting to have some problems.
This is
in the 30s.
1928 was when her initial flying,
but
and
in the 30s,
Lindbergh was 27. When she flew in 1932, but she was also setting records and flying from 1928 when her fame exploded as a passenger. She really didn't dream that she would be famous. She had no idea. I don't know if your listeners might know, but she was a social worker. She was a woman, a multifaceted woman. Who she is really gets lost in the excitement about her flying career. Her flying career was very, very short. It was only 9 years from the time, her known flying career.
Right.
She was a weekend pilot. She learned to fly when she was 23. When she was 23, she took a 5-minute ride in an airplane that her father paid, I believe, $5 for, and she, she thought, this is interesting. And that night she went home and had dinner with her family, and she very calmly said, I think I'd like to fly. Well, inwardly she thought, I would die if I don't. And so
this
from
was
that
a progressive woman for her timeline. She just got an idea about doing things, and she did them.
Exactly. And that's that's really the main focus of my book. The idea that what you should do, you should follow your passions, follow your dreams. I don't feel that a person can be fulfilled, that they can be happy in life if they don't go after the thing that they desire most, that they just if they are lucky even enough to discover their passion. One of the things I always think about with children is that they have to be exposed to a lot of different aspects, a lot of different interests in science, in the social sciences, in math, in the arts, because you really don't know what your passion is unless you actually get a taste of it. And in one of my chapters, that's entitled Passion Organic, because I would say that Amelia Earhart didn't sit down and say, let me see what I want to do with my life. Let me see what I'm terribly passionate about. She took this little airplane ride and for 5 minutes, landed. She didn't fly it, of course, and knew that she had to fly. And that's what she wanted to do. And so she she paid for her own lessons.
Now, did she get a lot of flack by people because she wanted to fly and she wanted to learn that and she was this type of really strong and powerful, outgoing woman?
I don't think she really did. I don't know how many people know this, but she was taught to fly by another woman, Netta Snook, who.
Oh, really?
Yes, and there were a lot of women. There were women flying.
Mm-hmm.
The first woman that flew across the English Channel was Harriet Quimby.
Yes, I know that.
In 1911.
Yeah.
And women were flying. You just don't know about them per se, because in Amelia's case, she happened to be connected because of the Friendship flight, which was a 1928 flight, with George Palmer Putnam, the most successful publisher and promoter of that period of the 20s and 30s. And what's fascinating, people probably, I don't know what your audience's knowledge is. It's always interesting to me, is that
my audience doesn't know anything.
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty of people.
I got 5 viewers and 5 listeners. And
No.
What do they know? They know how to go get a burrito and a steak.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. Hi, people out there.
I think I just pissed off everybody.
No. And I'd like to know any questions you have or any information that you can give me as audience members. I love hearing your stories, too. You can always contact me at robertabasson.com, which is my website, or on Facebook, or on Twitter. My handle is at Roberta Basson. Because what isn't usually known is that George Palmer Putnam wanted to find a woman to be the first passenger to fly across the Atlantic.
So he was looking for the right lady.
Right.
And she fit the bill. She was a pretty good-looking lady.
She was perfect.
Yeah.
She was interviewed. See, so he had the book in mind first.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't that she flew across and then he came up with the book. The idea was that he had been the publisher for Lindbergh. That book was his most successful book.
Yeah.
So
Charles Lindbergh.
Yeah, Charles Lindbergh, who flew in 1927,
Right.
the first man to solo across the Atlantic.
And, of course, the Lindbergh event that took place with the crime in his family and the child.
The kidnapping of his child,
Yeah,
which
right.
was
that was
later.
his 2 famous things that
Right,
everybody remembers
exactly.
him for. Right.
And so when she was actually working as a social worker in Boston, she received a telephone call, which she did not want to take. She thought it was a hoax.
That's funny.
And the phone call on the other end, they said, we would like to interview you to be a passenger. I don't know if they told her exactly, but they wanted to interview her. And so George Palmer Putnam and some other individuals interviewed her. And she wanted to do this flight. She didn't get paid. She wanted to do this flight.
That's an interesting, I'm going to come back to that because that's very interesting you say that.
Yeah, she didn't get paid, but she wanted to do this. So one of the statements that that one hears a lot is that she felt she had to keep a level of mediocrity because she didn't want to be too charming because she said they might be loath to drown her. Now that meant, in the language of that time, that she would be too attractive and they wouldn't want her to get hurt so that she couldn't get the job. But so she was very savvy about that. And
well, she definitely is a woman of her time, understanding how to move through the bureaucracy and the politics of her era. That's for sure. It's interesting that you say she didn't get paid for that. And it's also interesting that you say she got this phone call and for this off-the-cuff interview, and she thought it was a fake call, prank call, or whatever. We just were talking earlier before the show with somebody else, one of the great record producers of all time, Jimmy Ivan. I mean, the guy produced every major hit that you could ever imagine, from rock and roll music to rap music. And his first job, a family member of him said, hey, at this recording studio down in town, they're looking for somebody to sweep floors and clean up. Why don't you go get a job? And he just went down to this, and he was sweeping floors and clean up, and now he's worth, $1 billion. It's funny how these sequence of events in our lives that seem so inconsequential while we're doing it, but yet can be so magnificent for the person and the world, what it can turn into. And no doubt success is sort of duplicated from generation to generation to generation, the really chemistry of success. And she had it.
And it was totally unexpected. She thought that after she flew across the Atlantic, she had taken a 2-week leave. She was going back to Boston and continue being a social worker. She worked with Syrian and Chinese children, teaching them English.
Right.
And so she thought that was what was going to happen. And then when they landed in Buryport, Wales, on that first 1928 flight, her whole life changed. The press, people, royalty only wanted to meet her. And she kept saying, but the boys are the ones that flew the plane. It wasn't me.
Right.
And she was very humbled by it. And she wasn't someone who liked a lot of attention. She just wanted to continue her life. And then this became
amazing.
Huge.
Amelia Earhart, me and our friends journaling the journey of Amelia Earhart, and also built into this terrific book that Roberta has written, and it's a bestseller too. Built into the book is sort of a self-help kind of a manual talking about this terrific woman. Here's the back cover, and you can kind of see.
And that back cover shows that she was a fashion designer. Yeah, and that's one of her outfits.
It's amazing that
it's a very rare photo, by the way.
It's just amazing the gifts that she had that most people don't know about, and so this book is a book that chronicles a little bit of her story, but yet wraps it up into a help book that can motivate people. Right. And help them along. Now, you have an interesting background too, because you're an actress. I mean, you've been in a lot of things. Let me see. You've got Golden Globe. You were an Emmy and Golden Globe winning movie. You were in Indictment.
Yeah, right? Indictment. That's a very famous. Yeah, changed everything for the people.
Barfly. You were in Barfly.
With Mickey Rourke, in fact, Barbet and I just Barbet and Frank Stallone and I and some of the members of the cast.
Frank's a good guy.
Had a sort of a mini reunion because it was shown in L.A. at the American Cinematheque organization.
Yeah,
it was very thrilling to so to be together again and see how people really enjoyed it, and people brought their young adult children to see it. They had never seen it, and apparently, it holds up.
Oh, Barfly
It holds up. It's
You
a
darn right
classic.
it does.
It's been a classic.
So you've
Yeah.
been on Ray Donovan, Criminal Minds, Grey's Anatomy, Major Crimes, ER, The Pretender, Crossing Jordan, and The American Dreams, and the list goes on and on and on and
Thank
on
you.
and on. And you have a lifetime teaching credential, I guess, with UCLA as well.
Right.
And you love jazz and ballet and all these.
Jazz, when you say jazz, it's jazz dance.
Right.
I didn't know. It's jazz
So
dance.
are we going to dance during the show or
Oh,
what?
wow. That sounds great.
Maestro, where's the music?
Yeah.
Thank you. But let's get back to the story now with Amelia.
Yeah, okay.
Which is really interesting. So we talked a little bit about the beginnings of this
Mm-hmm.
flying career and kind of who she was, and now she becomes an instant superstar
Right.
of her time.
Beyond superstar.
Yeah,
Beyond
I don't think-
anything that Gore Vidal, his father, Jean Vidal, was very close with Amelia Earhart.
Right.
But Gore Vidal said it was like nothing you ever saw. And Gore Vidal said, I had walked with Eleanor Roosevelt, I had been with famous people, but nobody commanded the crowds that Amelia did. It was beyond superstar.
And it is interesting that you say that, because when we think of superstars today, of course, we try to link that to the superstars of the past.
Mm-hmm.
Today's superstars, like maybe,
Beyonce,
Gosling, Robert Downey Jr., Meryl Streep,
Right.
all these, Quincy Jones, all these great artists and just artistic people, they don't even come close to yesteryear's superstar like Amelia Earhart. I mean, she captured the world, and there
She
was no
did.
technology. There was no internet computers
No,
or
but
TV.
there were. They had just started the newsreels in the movie theaters.
That's right.
And so that had a lot to do with her fame, because people didn't travel like they do now. You know, aviation really changed how we
Right.
live. And she saw that. She said flying will become as commonplace as train travel at that time. But so the newsreel brought the audiences to places they had never been, and they see this woman that looks like them, comes from the Midwest, talks like them, but she's with royalty. She's in all kinds of amazingly exotic places. And so, the times, everything fit together. Women were fighting for women's rights
Right.
already. And
Well, women's
she was
suffrage,
right.
right,
And
all that,
she was a representative for that. And she was well publicized because of her husband. So the combination, her appearance,
Yeah.
she had a mystique about her. I always equate her.
Well, I love her in the leather.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that's her, and then that's me next
Yeah.
to the plane.
Wait a minute, I thought that were both you guys here.
No,
the
no,
same
I'm
person. I
the
was
the
like,
yellow's me.
I think you're Amelia Earhart. That's it.
Well,
you're Amelia. Wait a minute, let me see this here. Wait, I think you're Amelia. Wait a second here. How did you hold your age so well? You'd be
Oh,
at least
thank you.
110.
Oh, more than that, because she
Yeah.
was born in 1897.
Oh, yeah, she would have been more than 100, 120,
Yeah.
117, 120.
Right.
You look good for 120.
I know. I figured that,
But
she's
darling,
holding
my
up.
friend, you got to put the leather on, okay?
Well, I actually, in my one-woman show, I do wear the leather.
Really, you do a one-woman show?
Yeah, that's what the book came out of.
Wow, isn't that...
Because the book, the show I've been doing for 17 years, I've done it. I'm hired all over for, different corporations, universities, playhouses, and I wasn't going to write a book. And people kept saying, "Are you going to write a book?" And I said, "No, there are plenty of books. You don't need another book." And then, it took a long time to write it, but I start writing for myself. I wasn't
Right.
writing a book for other people. Found that because I knew Amelia so well, I knew her statements. She was always in my head from doing the book. That I started to find that when I had a difficult situation or a unique happening or just your everyday occurrences, her statements would float into my head. And I just start journaling it for myself about this statement really applies to my situation today, or how can I navigate this course today, or I feel overwhelmed. I remember her saying something about, or going for your passion, or following through. And so I start journaling this for myself.
Right.
And then one day I had this light bulb effect, and I realized,
You had a VA moment.
I had a VA moment.
That's right.
I did. And I thought, you know what? If this is so helpful to me, then maybe it would be helpful and interesting to other, somebody else. And so I decided to put all the journaling together and then intersperse it with what I call Dear Reader pages, with questions for the reader, so that, do you have a passion? Is there something in your life you're missing? Discuss it with Amelia and me,
right.
Because I'm giving you how I saw those quotations apply to my own life, right. And see how they can maybe help you navigate your situation, and also to remind you, and I have to say this to your audience,
Absolutely.
Congratulate yourselves for everything, every little thing that you accomplish or do, or just enjoying the day, or being able to really see the beauty of the sky on a pretty day, or even a stormy day, and say that you can feel it, and or anything that you feel that you want to accomplish, or that you have a family, or just that you're alive, just to do those things and remember that about things. And I when I put the book together, and then I started to, I all the pictures, it has a plethora of photographs of places that are associated with Amelia Earhart, and of Amelia Earhart's life and her journey.
So let's get back to this now. She after she becomes a superstar, and she's moving with kings and potentates and queens and the celebrities of the movie industry,
right.
And the politicians, and everybody wants to touch her and talk to her and have her at the party,
right.
Okay? And she's continuing her flying, and now she comes out to the West Coast. Hollywood finds her, of course, and what happens now as she gets out to the West Coast in her life? Does it explode to the point that it becomes an issue for her, or is she still that hometown kind of girl?
Well, the more famous she became, the more reserved she became. When I say reserved, I mean remote.
Private.
More private, exactly. Right. And I started to say a minute ago that I liken her to Princess Di, Princess Diana, because it's the same sort of trajectory. They both have a shyness, a beauty about them. They go into this completely not knowing what they're getting into. And I think at the beginning, both of them enjoy, navigating.
Sure, everybody
and
does,
they learn about how to navigate celebrity. But then it becomes oppressive. And it becomes like you're living in a fishbowl. And both of them, I know that Amelia said that. And we know what happened to Diana, because and there was just a special on about her
I think
and her
she
life.
was murdered. That's what I go on record with that anytime that topic comes up. She was offed by the queen and the prince, but that's a whole nother topic.
Right, that's another topic. but what I meant was that their lives were both I thought very similar, and I think they projected a similarity in they had a approachability and a kindness about them, and a concern for mankind and humanness.
Kind of.
Right.
Really? Yeah.
And she was fun.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes the more successful you become, the more reserved you become with the public. But I see that similarity in their appearance. If you see the way they present themselves, and in what happens in their life, and they both died very young. Very right. Amelia was 3 weeks shy of her 40th birthday when she passed. Or when she disappeared. Let me not say passed.
Because we're going to get into that here real soon. We're going to jump into that now real quickly. But in doing the one-woman play about Amelia,
which I still do.
Which you still do, and all the original research, and every time you're on stage, something different happens. You get something more out of the words that you put together. What were some of the things that surprised you about her in your research in developing the character of her in you, and talking about her life and living her experiences on stage? What were a couple of things that you went, wow, I never thought about it like that?
Well, it's interesting you put it that way. You say, I never thought about it. Each time I do the play, There's always something new. There's always new research that comes out. There's always new developments about her disappearance. But there's also the change in my status because, I get older.
Mm-hmm.
I change. My experiences change.
Well, you're only 31, right?
28.
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. Hubby at home, I apologize. I know you're 6'10". Please, I do apologize. Thank you.
But so it's true. So every time I do the play, I bring to it something new, and I learn something new when I reread the material or when I continually research it. And I think one of the things that really continually surprised me was that her femininity. People, I mean not people, but in general, it is thought because they see her in the typical Flyers uniform of the time, which was the jopper look. The joppers, I have a section about that, about the joppers, the leather jacket, the tie, the men's clothing that she appears to be comfortable in. She was very feminine and very much a fashionista, and she liked makeup, and she wore lipstick, and she carried a powder puff and a compact with her at all times. She designed her clothing was. She always said, I'm designing it for comfort, but it's very graceful, and she loved to dance. She danced with the Prince of Wales. Her femininity and her interest in a lot of different topics, usually, as I said previously, gets lost. Mm-hmm. And the more you get to know her, when I say get to know her, that's why I enjoyed putting the book together, because I really felt that I did know her. And I think what really cinched that for me was I had been doing the play for many years, and I was asked to present it at a breakfast for her stepson, George Palmer Putnam Jr.
Wow.
And that
So
and an audience of high profile aviation historians.
So they
people
know
in the
they know the
right.
ticket. Right.
So that was, I always had wondered if I ever presented my play and the character that I had gotten to know so well of Amelia, if I ever presented and had the opportunity before people who actually knew her, and someone as George Palmer Putnam Jr., her stepson, who had interacted with her, had known her during his marriage. He was about 10 years old when they got married.
Yeah, he has memories.
And she disappeared 9 years later. Right. So that was one of the highlights of my acting career as Amelia Earhart. And sure enough, I did the performance. I won't lie to you that I was holding my breath.
Yeah,
for sure.
Nervous wreck.
And afterwards, George Palmer Putnam Jr. and his wife Marie both came up to me. We got to know each other very, very well after meeting at that initial time, and they said, "Your heart is in it. Amelia Earhart is part of you."
Wow.
And I just, even when I say that, my whole body relaxes.
I know, you should see it. It just goes, woo, nice.
Because that just meant everything to me. And, that's what, and then Elgin Long, who I got to know very well, who just celebrated his 90th birthday. Happy birthday, Elgin.
Happy birthday, Elgin.
Elgin.
Should we sing happy birthday to him?
I think that his birthday will be happier if we don't. But,
what, you can't sing? I can sing.
I can, but...
I can sing terribly off key.
But anyways, he also attended that event, and he is well known as being the only man to circumnavigate the globe from pole to pole solo. And he also has a very famous book out on Amelia Earhart called Mystery Solved.
Pole to pole means this way, not this way.
Well,
okay.
pole to pole, north-south.
Yeah, north-south, just so you...
But anyways, I'm plugging his book too, Mystery Solved, Amelia Earhart. Wait a
minute, I'm intriguing myself here. Hold a second.
Okay,
all right. Had to get that out. Thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
But what I was saying was that he offered to write the foreword to my book, and I'm very honored. And he is another person that I would never have met and gotten to know so well, and we've had a lot of fun adventures.
And it also adds more to your ability as an actor to present a more real
Exactly.
Amelia Earhart.
Oh, exactly.
Now, what happened? What happened? Now, everybody knows the story. She got in this plane, a dual engine plane.
This was the Lockheed Electra. It's a
beautiful plane.
Yes, it's a large. It
plane
was
for the time.
State of the art
Beautiful
at that time.
plane.
1937.
Yeah.
It was state of the art.
Best of the best at that time. And she takes off from the point where she takes off at, but then all of a sudden she just disappears, and there's so much conjecture. There's so much hearsay evidence. There's so much ideas that have come up over the decades since her disappearance as to what happened to her. Even today, like we started the show with the picture. Now, so tell us a little bit about what led up to that journey, and then kind of your thoughts about what happened.
When you say led up to her leaving?
Journey, leaving.
Okay, so I deal with that in the book. The goal of Amelia Earhart and George Palmer Putnam, when they did this round the world flight, was once again to write a book of it. They wanted the book to be out for the Christmas sales. They had left on this. She had left on this round the world flight in May 20th, 1937. She was due to arrive back in California, Oakland, just before July 4th. Or July 4th. When they were planning this, when they were planning to circumnavigate the globe at the equator, the idea was that this was supposed to be the first solo flight to circumnavigate at the equator.
Okay.
All the legs had been flown already. A lot of things went wrong. It was almost like everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Really?
From the beginning. Initially, the reason I explain about the whole situation, about them planning and about the book, they had interviewed a navigator named Brad Washburn, which I talk about in my book, Amelia Earhart, Me and Our Friends. And Brad came out in a news article a number of years ago, and he said, well, I guess I can tell this. When he told them that they needed to put a lot of equipment on Howland Island, where she was going to land at Howland Island before she landed in Hawaii. She was going to, I believe, she was probably going to refuel.
Was that about a halfway point between the two?
This was on the way back.
Okay.
She was going to land there, and Brad Washburn said, if you land on Howland Island, which is only 1.5 miles long and about 1 mile wide, and only 2 feet above sea level.
Oh, boy.
So, like he said, if you don't hit Howland, you don't hit nothing, is how he'd say it. And so he said, you need radio equipment on that island. You need to set up all these things. And GP, George Palmer Putnam, said, if we go to all that trouble, the book will not be ready, out for Christmas.
Oh, don't tell me they're
And
pushing.
she agreed with him.
Wow.
Now, she was not happy with any kind of radio equipment herself to use. She was an old-fashioned flyer.
5-star?
Yes, they did use celestial navigation. Right. And she also never needed radio equipment like she needed it in crossing the Atlantic.
Right.
Like Brad Washburn said, if you fly from America to Europe, you can't miss it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But he said that Pacific is very lonely. And so, but she didn't really take that seriously. He didn't either. And Brad Washburn was not selected to be her navigator. So she originally had a team who was going to be flying with her. On her first attempt, she planned to lift off from Honolulu, and the plane swerved, and she never got off the ground, and it crashed. That was the first attempt. That was in March 20th.
So that's number one thing
1937.
That goes wrong.
Right. So then they had to get $50,000 additional to repair the plane. they
In that day?
and they got most
50,000?
of it from Princeton.
Wow.
Not Princeton, from Purdue. I'm sorry. Sorry, Princeton. Sorry, Purdue University. And that's where most of the materials now also, a lot of her materials are archived. Then they also, the people that were supposed to be on the plane with her, her radio man, Harry Manning, dropped out. Her, just a few days before they took off on the second attempt, her technical advisor, Paul Mance, dropped out. So you now had only her navigator, Fred Noonan.
Was there any reason that was given that these two individuals dropped out?
Well, the
Or
general
speculation?
speculation is that her technical advisor and George Palmer Putnam had an argument.
Okay.
That's the other one. The other speculation was that Harry Manning, who was her radio man and a navigator, the best in the business, which she needed desperately. Rumor, I believe, is that he was losing confidence in her.
Okay.
And then there was speculation that she was not physically or mentally up to this task. She was promoting 32 different. She was just like today. She was promoting 32 different different products.
Right.
And
so she was stretched out pretty thin.
Yeah, she was redesigning her home in California in Toluca Lake.
Yeah, I know the Amelia Earhart.
Right, yeah, the house right in Toluca Lake.
I
You
know.
can drive past it.
I sold a house two blocks away from there about
Right.
15 years ago.
Oh, there you go.
I know it well.
So anyways, you had all these elements. So
There's some stories about ghosts in that house too.
Oh.
The ghosts of
maybe I'll
Amelia
finally get
Earhart.
to meet her. Oh, but we don't know where she is.
No.
We can't say that.
Right, okay.
So quickly, I know because time is going by. So when they went off on their second attempt, because it was 2 months later, they had to reverse the flight. So before, the flight was 27,000 miles around the equator. Now it was 29,000 miles in the opposite direction.
So they had to go the longer one from the beginning.
They had to start out the opposite way. It had different weather. All these things.
Yeah.
Now, when she landed at Lae, New Guinea, which was she had from there she was supposed to go to Lae, New Guinea, to Howland Island. From
Right.
Howland Island, she was supposed to go to Hawaii,
Right.
and then from Hawaii to Oakland. And at that time, she was emaciated. When you see the photographs of her at that time,
in your book.
well, actually, the photographs of her just before she went to Howland are so horrific looking that it was suggested to me not to actually put them in. They are so disturbing.
Was she sick?
She was. She already had diarrhea all the time, dysentery.
Right.
She was sleeping 5 hours a night. She looks like a skeleton. She looks just terrible. And so she didn't, and then just before they're supposed to leave off for Howland, she says to her husband by way of the phone that she used the word personnel problems, and that was a code word for that Noonan, her navigator, was drinking. Now, there is speculation that he may not have been inebriated when they actually took off the flight. That is speculation, too, that if he was drinking, I've read interviews by people who had been in the bars with him, and that there seems to have been plenty of time between the time that he drank the night before and the time they would have taken off.
Right.
But that, again, is speculation. So you had all these elements. When her husband and her friend Jean Vidal suggested that she not continue the flight, she said, "Oh, everything will be fine." Now, you have to keep in mind that she grew up her father was an alcoholic. Later,
So she
in her
had
life.
some experience with people that drank alcohol.
right? And she felt that, I'm sure, like anyone who's had experience. I mean, I'm imagining that she just could go forth, and she did. She made that
if
decision.
She had that experience. She
Right.
knew the kind of traits that happened to different people when they're
So when
intoxicated.
they took off from Howland, she just figured. I mean, they just continued.
Took off, right.
Right. I do have the log with me, which I've included in my book, because those just give you the facts exactly what
Can
in
you
her
read
last
some of
few
that?
minutes. Yes, I can.
So we're here with Roberta Basson, And she wrote this great book called Amelia Earhart, Me and Our Friends, Journaling the Journey of the Great Amelia Earhart. And it's a self-help book, and it's a bestseller. And we'll tell you where to get it. But we're talking now.
Amazon.com.
Yeah, Amazon.com. We're talking right now, though, about what happened to Amelia. So
In the last minutes before she disappeared, there was a lot of miscoordination between her plane communication and the ship Itasca, which was supposed to radio her in. It was so. Here is what Itasca could hear her, but she could not hear them.
Okay.
At 7:42 a.m., she says, "We must be on you, but fuel is running low. Been unable to reach you by radio. Are flying at altitude 1,000 feet." At 7:58 a.m., she says, "We are circling, but cannot hear you. Go ahead on 7,500 either now or on the scheduled time on the half hour." At 8:44, that is an hour later, she says, "We are on the line of position 157, 337. We'll repeat this message on 6210 LCS, listening on 6210. We are running north and south." At 8:47 a.m., the Itasca log says, "We heard you okay," that's the first time, on 3105. Itasca says, "This broadcast by voice on 3105 and key 7500. The reason I give silence at that point is that's the silence they got. She was never heard from again after that moment. Now she was they know she was within 100 miles of Howland Island, of her destination, when that statement was stated. Those are the facts. Now you can extrapolate what you think happened or where she disappeared, but that is the last words they heard from her.
Now, all the research that has been done over the decades to try to find pieces of her plane or pieces of clothing or camping out stuff or survival fire pits or all this stuff that you see, yet they've never been able to come to some conclusive idea that they survived after that silence. Now, being 100 miles away from...
Within 100 miles.
So within that circle of 100 miles of Howland Island, we know, as she said, she was low on fuel, and that, like you said, was an hour or so before. So her fuel is going down and down and down.
Her fuel should have been gone within a half hour when she first radioed.
Right.
She shouldn't have had any fuel. By calculation, should have been out of fuel already for a half hour.
So the math is the math, and the math doesn't lie. When
Right.
you know the plane and you know where they're at.
Right.
And the fuel that but we don't know the mark of how low she was, but that true is there in terms of what she says. But all the speculation over the years, they've never been able to find anything. And then all of a sudden, this photograph comes up just a few weeks ago. Now, talk to me about
okay.
How does that happen?
Well, every 2 years, and you can look at it's very easy now because you have the internet.
Right.
But I have all the documentation. Every 2 years, something comes out about Amelia Earhart, and a lot of times it's the same stories, just reintroduced, rehashed. And this latest report about. Well, I have this one too.
Okay.
I brought everything. The latest report was the documentary that came out on the History Channel.
Right. Exactly.
And it could have, and very simply, it happened to be that somebody, a gentleman, had seen this picture that you see, and he felt, I can even read some of the information to you. But
yeah, go ahead. We've got a little time left. Absolutely.
And he mentioned that he was very adamant that he felt that this was Amelia Earhart. Now, when I saw that photo, I had a different opinion. But as it turned out, of course, this photo was taken 2 years before her disappearance. It is in a travel log in the Japanese library. You can go online and actually look. Here is the full book. You can even find it. It's in the Japanese National Library. And it is It is it was brought out by a Japanese military history blogger who just ran some checks on this. I'm just reading this from this this paper that I have, and the photo was said that it was a travel book on different islands.
Oh,
in that area.
So it's a photo. The whole photo. This whole documentary is just a big scam.
Well, it's what it said was the steamship on the right of the photo is a Japanese Navy survey ship. The ship participated in search missions later for Amelia and arrived at Jalut Atoll in 1937, but it also was in 1935 in that location. And this actually is a photo of a boat race. That photo that you just saw is of a boat race.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was 1935.
So this photo was before they say the photo was supposed to be after.
Sure, because that's 2 years before she even attempted to circumnavigate the...
So what happened to Amelia with all of your study and research and understanding and your interest in this? What is your opinion about what happened? Is she swimming with the fishes?
Well, when I do a play or a presentation, I really open that up to the audience for conjecture, because everybody has a different theory.
So what is your theory?
The general theory is called is the crashed and sank theory. That because I read you the log,
yes,
and I read your audience the log, that says that she ran out of fuel and the plane went down.
Right.
Now, since it's a cold case and we don't have any tangible proof, you have various theories that abound. And you have the theory that she was captured by the Japanese, taken to Saipan, executed. You have the theory that
I don't see them doing that to her.
That she disappeared and that she wound up on Nicomorea Island, that her plane never really did go down, that it somehow drifted 350 miles
in the water
south to Nicomorea Island.
That's a great floating plane.
You know, or was somehow got over there by the current. So you have a million different things. Now, the irony is that the Japanese actually helped look for Amelia Earhart in those 2 weeks.
They did. They didn't take
They
her.
actually, I'm just saying, I'm just giving the facts.
Yeah.
They actually did, and people, and that's usually a surprise, that they were cooperative in that search. She also, there's still been no validation on anything that has ever been found on Nicomorea Island, even though there are a lot of different things. And so it remains a cold case. And I just want to say that, leave your audience, how much? I don't know how much time you have. 1 minute.
1 minute.
I leave your audience with her words that she believed in going after your passion, following your dream. To know in one's heart to want to do something is to follow that passion and believe in yourself and have fun doing it.
Yeah, I want to believe that what the general idea is that her plane sank and they drowned and they died. Because by now we would have found stuff on the island. We would have found stuff somewhere in the world that would have been hers after the fact. Something would have come up in these years, almost 100 years now, of looking for this woman. So it's a shame, but she is a superstar then and a superstar now, and we appreciate you carrying on her story, because what you've done with it is you've turned it into something that is very helpful and motivating.
Oh, thank you.
For someone that never gave up on her passion.
That's true, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. Yes, I do.
Roberta Basson, everybody, and her book, you got it right here, Amelia Earhart, Me and Our Friends Journaling The Journey on the Jesse T Show, a bestseller. Yay! You did a great
Thank
job.
you.
Look at this. Yay! What a good job. She was so
and
nervous
he was,
when she came in
he
here.
was so nice. He was so great.
Look at the Jesse T Show tomorrow, 5 to 6. Round up, wound up. We're going to lay it down, baby.
Bye, everybody.
We'll
It's
see you.
great
The Brown
to-
Beauty is off duty. See ya!